City lecture. I want to just mention again the transition we've made from the Digital Divide lectures that myself and Dr. Alcalama established 7 years ago to this new name, Information City, and reflect on the fact for a moment that we think very often of the digital divide as being something that a person has. So you may have less access to IT or you may have less use of it, but it's also something that a community has. Because if you live in a community where a lot of people are experiencing a digital divide, then that community itself is bifurcated. There's people who are whizzes, who are doing and using and connecting, and there's people who are excluded. And the Information City lecture, the Information City concept, is one that's trying to pull us all in the direction of thinking about that community level digital divide, as well as how to marshal community resources in an organized, collective way. So trying to bump things up from the digital divide as seen in individuals or individual organizations or sectors to as a whole community problem. And I'm very pleased to have the guest that we have here today to help us do that this week. But in order to introduce her, I'm going to introduce Kristina Silliman, who is a student in community informatics this semester, like all of our panelists, our presenters, introducers. But she is also a PhD student, I believe first year, right? In the College of Ed in Curriculum and Instruction. So she is among those few students who are outside GISLIS who managed to find their way into this wonderful thing, which is community informatics at Illinois. So Kristina is going to introduce our main speaker, and be ready with your questions, guys. Last week we had more questions. That was a real positive. So think in advance about your questions today.
So I'm pleased to introduce Kristina Hoerner from the Champaign Public Library. She grew up an hour south of Champaign on a farm between Windsor and Gaze, Illinois. She received 3 degrees from the University of Illinois, a BA in American History, an MA in Women's History, and an MLS. After receiving an MLS, Kristina began her work in public libraries. She started out at the Brownsburg Public Library in Brownsburg, Indiana, going from reference librarian to adult public services coordinator. Then she moved to the Tippecanoe County Public Library in Lafayette, where she started as the young adult librarian and moved to assistant head children's librarian. In 2001, Kristina accepted her current position as the adult services manager with the Champaign Public Library.
Thank you. I'm a very extemporaneous speaker, so my slides are just so you have something else to look at besides me. But since they're behind me, that sort of defeats that purpose. And I will sit. Generally, I like to stand, but this chair may throw me out, so we'll see. I am very excited to be a part of this profession, and I'm going to start out with something a little different. Because I am fortunate enough to have a job that every day I enjoy what I do, most of the time. In every job, there are things that you don't like and that you don't want to do and that you find yourself in that you didn't intend to find yourself in. But librarianship is something that I've been very pleased to make as my career, and working at the Champaign Public Library has certainly been a really fantastic experience. You get a chance to do things in the community, you get a chance to do things in the library, and you have an acceptance in this community that is something you don't see in a lot of other places. So we're very fortunate in this community, and I hope you will feel very fortunate in the choices you make as you move along in this profession. With my previous degrees, public librarianship wasn't exactly where I thought I would end up. When I was here in library school, I sort of did a little bit of everything, but mainly more of a move towards museums or archivists, because I have that master's in women's history. But when I got out in the library world, which I won't tell you how long ago that was, because then you'll all think about how old you were at that time, and that's something I don't want to think about. I didn't find jobs in that particular field. So I started out, with a job in a public library because that was the job I could find at that time. And I really found out that this was right for me. So, you go into a situation where you think you know what you want, but it happened that I fell into something that was right for me. Public libraries, if you work in the right public library, give you the opportunity to have your finger in so many different pies. And it depends on how departmentally organized your library is, but every day is different. You go in with the idea of this is how today is going to be, and generally with the public library you find out that that's not how it ends up being. So it's very exciting, and this is a very exciting time for libraries. So many libraries, as things are changing with the technology that's available and with the types of materials that are available, so many libraries are trying to figure out, now that what we do, particularly in my department, which is adult services, now that the number of reference questions we're getting are different, what is the service that we're going to provide to the community going to become different? And what is the community wanting from us? And so a lot of libraries are in that place of trying to figure out what else do we do? What do we do differently? How do we engage with our community in different ways? So my library is going to soon, I believe, start another strategic planning process, which is one of those places that can help direct where you're heading and what you want to do. But it's also something you do every day, where you're trying to figure out what sort of programming opportunities you're going to offer for the next season, what sort of different proposals you're offered from the university that you're going to decide to give a try. But I do want to encourage you, and then I'll move on to what I really intended to talk about, because I don't think I see any faces here that have been a part of our volunteering program that we do have.
I'll be starting soon.
Okay, there you go. Okay, and you're familiar. I just met you on Monday night. So I think you're going to have an opportunity to volunteer with us, or with someone, most of you. We also have great practicum opportunities as well. If you're not quite sure that maybe public libraries are what you're thinking about and you want to see, our practicum opportunities are entirely frontline experience. So you get great opportunities to figure out if this is the right career for you, with some hand-holding by some very experienced librarians and support staff who can help you with making those decisions. So I don't want to ever forget about that. But I'm here to talk about what we do now at the Champaign Public Library. And here's just a little bit about who we are. Like I said, the slides are really just to help keep me a little more focused. But to also, how many of you have been to the Champaign Public Library? So most people. Have you been there just on a visit, or how many of you use it as a regular space to study? So just a few. So you've probably been in to look, but not really had an idea of what we do and of what we have. So how many of you live in Champaign? How many of you have library cards at the Champaign Public Library? Just a few. How many of you use Netflix? Oh, a lot more. Do you know, I didn't do a slide about the different electronic resources that we have, but ebooks are something everybody assumes that the library has and that you can be a part of. But we also have Zenio, which are digital magazines that you can use, and you get to keep the magazine. You don't check it out and have to return it at a certain period of time. One of our newer services we've only had for a few months is Hoopla, which is digital music, digital TV shows, digital movies, and audiobooks, and all of that available to you with a Champaign library card. The things we have are stuff for entertainment, which I know as busy students you don't have a lot of time for, but why pay for it if we already have? So I encourage you to get your public library card and be a part of the community. So here's a little bit about our library. Our current building was opened in January of 2008. So none of you ever saw the old building, which looked a little bit like a tin can. And it was, popular architecture for the time, but it was not a very attractive building according to today's standards. And it was a third the size of the building we have right now. So in January 2008, we opened this brand new, fabulous building, and it has enabled us to do so many things that were not possible if you just remodel an existing building or if you're using a much smaller building. We had an opportunity to put so many environmental features in place, so many energy-saving features in place, and so many ways to adapt to technology as it changes that makes this space really different. And the community has certainly accepted the library wholeheartedly. We do over 2 million circulation a year, as you can see from the slide here. We have 950,000 visitors a year. 33,000 cardholders, which we would like to see a lot higher because Champaign has around 82,000 people in its population. So we'd like to see that number a lot higher. 440,000 items, plus items in our collection, including our electronic items. That's another number we'd like to see higher. For a community of this size, it would be good to have more materials. 126,000 computer uses in a year, and about 127,000 reference questions. We only count reference questions. So you can imagine the other sorts of directional questions we receive will probably triple that number. We are just a busy, busy library. About 5,700 items are checked out every day. Over 2,700 people a day come to use the library. Some of them it's just to use the meeting rooms or just to use the Wi-Fi. Not everyone is actually using the library to check materials out. But this is the only place I've ever worked at where on some days it's like being in a shopping mall. The constant stream of people coming in the door. We have 355 people a day use a computer. Over 200 a day use our Wi-Fi. Sometimes that can max out the Wi-Fi, particularly on reading day. So, so be prepared for that if that's where you're planning to come. 115 using a program, attending a program every single day, and over 24 meeting and study room uses every single day. So it's just a busy, busy place. And for the last 6 years running, we've been a 4-star library with the Library Journal Award. And I've heard a rumor we might get another one. Can't say for sure, but we're hopeful for that. Even though our circulation numbers have dropped off, there's still other numbers that compensate for that. And last year was the first time we won a John Cotton, I always say it backwards, John Cotton Dana Award for a promotional campaign that we did to do fundraising for the library. It was the Love My Library campaign. So we're very, very excited about that. So that's just to explain a little bit about who we are, and so you can see the lovely outside of the building. And a little bit more talking into some of the technology we put into this building. AMH, I explained what it is back there, but that's the way we refer to it, automatic materials handling. When we opened this building, we had great hopes for the number of staff that we'd be able to have in the building to keep everything working very well, but unfortunately, the economic setback of 2008, and we've just not had a recovery of that. 90% or 92% of the library's budget comes from property taxes. And the property values have gone down and they have not rebounded. So the amount of money that the library takes in every year has gone down and is not keeping up with the money we need to meet our budget expenses. So though we had a certain set of what our staff should be when we opened the building, we have now had to leave 17 positions vacant as they have come open. We have about, if you're looking at full-time equivalent, I think it's about a 75 full-time equivalents. So that's huge. And some of the positions are managerial or administrative positions. Some of them are in circulation, which you would expect, but and children's. We are, I think, only down a half a person in my department, but we didn't fill our assistant manager job when she retired. These are all through attrition. We didn't ask anyone to leave. Our promotions manager just left, and we're not filling her position. Just because, as we go forward into the next fiscal year, we don't have the money to meet the gap between what our needs are and what property taxes bring in. So we may be looking at even more and more drastic cuts. So something like automatic materials handling and RFID technology are what enable us to continue to run the building as far as checking things in and out with fewer staff than we had in a building a third the size of this building. This is a 120,000 square foot building. And with over 2 million in circulation, that's a lot of things going in and out. And a smaller circulation staff, if you had to check every single item in manually, there'd be no way we could keep up with that. So how many of you know what an automatic materials handling system is? It's a conveyor, basically, that accepts the books. We have one on the outside and one on the inside. It accepts the books. They run down on a conveyor. And what you see here on the left is the sorting hat from Harry Potter. Under the sorting hat is the moment where they're checked in. And then they continue down the conveyor, and we have 19 different bins that have been categorized in different subject areas. Then they go down the conveyor and they slide into the bin for the area that is closest to what that item happens to be. That enables us to, then they're checked in at that moment. Some things go all the way to the end and drop off if they for some reason the tag can't get read or it isn't from a library that has a tag in it. But then the other things are then in these bins, and they can be easily pulled out when they're full and sorted onto carts and then get upstairs that much faster. So the AMH is great. But, you know, it's getting older, and so that is an issue that, you know, if you're in administration in a library, you do have to think about costs to repair and maintain technology equipment like that. Because if the conveyor goes down, you're doing everything by hand, and all of a sudden that slows down that whole entire process of checking things in. We check things out at the desk you see on the right. That is our large checkout desk. It's intended to be a mainly self-check point, but we do have double monitors so that staff can also see on the other side and assist as needed. We tried to make this building as self-service as it can be, so you can decide for yourself how long you would like to be at the library. You can Zoom, you can call us on the phone, say you want something pulled off the shelf, we'll put it in the holds room, you can zoom in, grab it, check out, and go in just a matter of minutes. Or you can choose to browse around and sit there all day. That's really up to you. But as far as working at the circulation desk goes, the ability to have people check their own things out means less direct intervention from a staff member. So you don't have to staff it with as many people, and you can manage to just step into those situations where a staff member needs to be involved, maybe helping with a payment, maybe helping teach someone how to use it. So it really saves a lot of manpower to be able to have that kind of technology. And that's, you know, the stuff that doesn't even, you know, customers are interacting with technology and don't even realize they're interacting with technology. In the beginning, it does take some forcing. I don't want to check out on that. I want a person to check me out. So you have to be very convincing to show them how easy it is and how you can stand here and watch them, you can stand here and help them, but eventually then once they see how fast, then they begin to use it on their own. And the same thing in the beginning with people not wanting to put their thing on the conveyor because they don't know where that goes or what might happen with it. Just sort of getting people used to it is a big part of the transition, and now they don't even think about it. But we're so very fortunate to have it because it makes it so much easier for us. But most of the things we try to do are, now that things are more mobile and that people are using the library in lots of different ways on their own, we're trying to encourage those types of interactions. With our automation system and with, I don't know if you're familiar with Boopsy or not, they're a company that makes apps and connects with all kinds of other products that work in the library world. On the upper left is our mobile checkout station. It doesn't work as well with tablets, but if you have it works best with a phone and a barcode reader on your phone, you can, up on the second floor or any place in the children's department, check out your book using your mobile device. And you just have to stop at this station on the way out, because otherwise you'll beep when you go through the security gates. And turn off the security piece, and you don't even have to stop at the checkout desk. You've already checked your item out and you're set to go. So that's a very cool thing, to be able to offer people that you don't have to even go to the checkout desk. I don't know that a lot of people take advantage of it at this point. One of the things we struggle with is how to let people know what's available to them. Even, the things that they might not have even thought about. It's one thing if they're interested in it and they think about it and they look at our website and they ask questions, but giving them the knowledge before they have the question is where we struggle with letting people know that it's even available, because it's a cool feature and it works very well, but I don't know how often it's used. We do have our own app. You can see there on the upper right. And now that things have even improved with the app, you find it in your regular app store, depending on what your device happens to be. Just look under Champaign Public Library and you'll find it. You can monitor your account from there. You can renew things. All of our electronic services, which include My Media Mall, which is an ebook and audiobook service, 3M, some of our regular reference databases, as well as Hoopla and Xenio, you can all just use through the app. You don't necessarily have to go into the app for those devices, though most of them want you to also have the app for those products as well in order to be able to use the content that you access. But it's very easy to use it there. We've got recommended reading lists there. We've got our events calendar there. That's where mobile checkout is if you want to do mobile checkout. So our app has become a lot more full service than it used to be. It isn't just about the catalog. It's about all the other things that we can provide as well. So that's pretty cool. We have mobile printing. That's the one on the bottom. If you've got, instead of having to use, if you have your laptop and you come in and you just really quickly need to print something, say you're trying to catch a bus, you need your bus ticket, You don't have to get onto the library's computers, which do require a library card. You can just send the print job, even from home. If you don't have a printer at home and you're just going to run past the library, it does hold it all day. So you can send it there, print it. You can send it from your mobile device rather than your laptop, and it's really easy to pick up. A lot of people, it seems like their printers go out, they don't have the ink. For some reason it isn't working, or they're just sitting using the library and they've got a few things they just need to print, but they, it was always a pain in the past that they either had to email it to themselves or put it on a USB and then move over to our computers to actually print. You don't have to do that anymore. And yes?
So then how would you charge for the printing that way?
In order to release the print job, you do need to go to one of our print stations, which has a vending machine attached to it where you put the money in. You use your email address in order to access your print job on the machine. Put in the money that we charge 15 cents a page for black and white, or $1 a page if you want to do color. And you put the money in, you put your email address in, the money in, and it just prints the job out and you go. So, very, very convenient. The biggest thing we are trying to do right now is to make our services as convenient for users as possible. Expectations, really have gone up as far as what the library should deliver, and we're trying to continue to meet those expectations as well as we can. We don't want people to have to wait very long, so that's why you try to balance how many people you need at the desk to provide a particular service. People aren't very patient about waiting for their print job, even what only seems like a minute or two, or for the computer to reboot for someone else to get onto a computer. So trying to manage all of those demands, convenience is what we really go for. And even more so as we talk about some of the other services as we move along. I forgot to include a slide for this, but all of our computers, which actually I'll move on so you can see our public computer choices. We have computers in all the different areas of the building. Some of them are specific by age. So we have, I think it's 12 computers in the children's department. And you have to be between the ages of birth up to 12 in order to use them. You can't be older than 12. And we use library cards, or what we call computer use cards, in order to access those computers, and it goes off the birth date on the card. So you can't use you're not supposed to use anyone else's card. And then in the teen room, we have, which is a little bit that you can see with the two young men there on the bottom left. That is between the ages of 11 and 18 to use the computers in that space. So there is a little bit of overlap for those kids that are maybe not comfortable going into the teen room if they're a little on the young end of teens. But in fact, in most cases, a lot of them want to be able to move into the teen room a little earlier than we set. We're always getting 10-year-olds, but I'm almost 11. Well, we had to wait until you're actually 11. We have to make a cutoff at some point. So those spaces are very much by age. We do filter the computers in those areas as appropriate for those age groups. And we have actually changed how we do some things in the teen room recently because of some struggles with the games that some kids were playing, but others aren't. It isn't really appropriate for everyone in the space. I see you nodding.
I'm part of the grant, so I know Sarah. And
We had a very small group of boys who were playing first-person shooter games in the space. We don't necessarily care that that's what they're playing. The problem is the discussion of what they're playing. Oh, I shot him in the eye. Not everybody. That's not appropriate for everyone in the room to hear, and it was really creating a culture in the space that some kids weren't very comfortable using the computers in there, and these boys were. It's about 6 or 7 boys that were hogging the computers, not unnecessarily, because we are really generous on our computer time. But it was just creating a space where not other people wanted to use the computers around them. So we just, in the last 2 weeks, have made the teen space a PG zone. Those guys are welcome to use their games play their games upstairs. They do need to meet the behavioral guidelines that we set in the space upstairs for all ages, which isn't as noisy as they can be down in teen space. So we're not making any sort of judgment calls about the game that they're playing, but we just want everybody else that's of that age to feel comfortable in that space. So we've made teen space a PG zone. It's a G zone in children's, PG in teen, and we're free for all upstairs. No, we're not. We can be to a certain extent, but we do have some guidelines there too. So teen is filtered, and there is restrictions about the types of games that are okay in teen space. But up on the second floor is where we have unfiltered access, though it's not really completely unfiltered. We don't use software to filter. but we do what I call passive filtering, meaning staff are looking at the screens as we walk around, and if we see something that is inappropriate for everyone to view, most of what we key off of is nudity, sexual acts, obscene language. If it's big enough that I can read it with my bad eyesight, we're not going to allow that because we don't let people swear in the library. So we're also not going to let you swear on the screen for everyone to see. And we don't, some violence would be a problem, but most people don't react to that the same way they do to the sexual situations and the nudity. So that's why I say we do filter upstairs in that passively, if we see it, we ask you to find something else to look at. But that is a space where adults and children, if they want to use a computer next to each other, they can, because adults can't use the computers down in the children's department, with the exception of the one slide I didn't put up here, which is we have a couple of laptops in the children's department that parents could use while their children are using the children's department. It doesn't have any Office products on it, so you can't really do any word processing or anything like that, but you could use it for the internet. It's available to Champaign card holders only, so that is certainly another option. And another option I forgot to include, we have some Kindles that we have preloaded with lots of different books on them, divided by different genres, and those are also available to check out. But on the second floor, which is the biggest picture you see there on the right, we have about 25 computers out on the floor, and then in the last end you see that computer room, that's our quiet computer room. We have another 25 or 26 computers in there, so about 50 computers on the second floor. 20 in teen space, 12 in the children's department. And that's where a lot of our work is devoted these days. Lots and lots of questions about how to do things. That's where we have a lot of need for volunteers. And you know, in the children's department, they're playing mainly the games that are provided on those computers. The teen space, they're really not doing homework. They're on Facebook, they're on the games that they're playing, they're interacting with each other in social ways. There isn't a lot of need for assistance. Surprisingly, a lot of teens really don't know how to do a lot of other things on the computers, which it really is surprising. But that doesn't generally come up because they're not using those computers for school-related kinds of topics. There are a few. I don't want to, paint all of them with the same brush, but for the most part, what they're doing down there, they work very independently. On the second floor, we can have all kinds of needs. Everything from someone who has to apply for a job and they've never ever used a computer before. Noah's nodding his head because he gets to help them. They've never used a computer before, but nowadays almost every employment situation is only accepting online applications. And so you have people come in, they have to set up an email address, they have to try to figure out how to fill out this application. And you would think that they would be people on the older end of the spectrum, but that's not necessarily the case. There can be pretty young people that haven't had a need for an email address, and so they haven't set one up. They can be people in the middle ages, of life who just really, it wasn't something they were interested in, and so they've never done it. And then, of course, you do have the older ones that are trying to find a way to stay current with what's going on. For them, it's not looking for a job; it's just trying to figure out how to get through life. Because applying for Social Security, you need to do online. Applying for the healthcare marketplace, you have to do online. So there are lots of different situations where people come in and they might need help. Sometimes it's just they're working on something and they're just stuck. They can't figure out how to make Excel do something they needed to do, or they accidentally pressed a combination of keys in Word that they have no idea why everything is highlighted now. And frankly, lots of times we don't know either, so you're just sort of guessing. But that is become, as the number of reference questions have, difficult reference questions, because we still get, obviously, lots and lots of reference questions, including, can you help me find this phone number? We get a lot of phone number lookups. You sometimes want to say, should I mail you a phone book? Because they're for really simple things, like I need the number for Meyer. And you're thinking, okay. We still get lots and lots of those kinds of questions, but we're getting an exponentially higher number of needs for assistance with computers. Both the computers we have in the building and for the devices that people are purchasing and bringing into us. You've got the group of people who are really adept with computers, but in trying to use the software that's out there to access library resources, it's horrible if you have any ability to program at all. and some way that you can work with the publishers on these things. It's amazing that people are willing to stick with it enough to use library resources, ebooks and magazines, and not so bad with Hoopla because it's pretty easy. But I don't. Some of these people, you either have to be really motivated or really cheap to be willing to stick it out with a library product because they're horrible. And I hate that I have to say that. And you have to be really encouraging with people to get them to use these things. And you want to say it's easy, but it's not. It's when you buy something on your device from Amazon, that's one click. You got it. You do have to know how to get into your account. But with most of these other things for libraries, it's multiple places you have to click. Sometimes you have to set up 2 accounts, and sometimes you have to do Adobe authentication that is just ridiculous. And to be encouraging for people who already are struggling and trying to understand the iPad that they have and asking them to go through all these steps is just really unfortunate. So that's some of the biggest things that we see. Sometimes people have purchased these devices themselves because they think, I love books. How much easier would it be to have books whenever I want them without having to go to the library? And sometimes it's because their kids have said, you really need this. You love books. I think you will love this. And they come to us, and it's really difficult sometimes to help them understand the steps they need to follow. Once they get it down, some of them are okay. Others, it's always a struggle for them to be able to use these resources. And that's horrible because, we're all like, the people who come to you for these things are excited about books. They love books. Or they're excited about the music or the movies. And you want them to feel really good about what you're providing to them because they're so excited about everything else the library has done for them all throughout their life. And then we're providing something that isn't the easiest product to use, and we don't have any other choices for them. And that's a struggle. I really feel very badly about the quality of the library products that are out there for ebooks and audiobooks. And I hope they've gotten better over the years, and I hope they will continue to get better so that people will turn to these as a viable alternative for them. Because we want to stay a part of what they're doing with their digital resources. So what we have are a lot of people who are using our computers that need a lot of help, and we don't always have enough staff to help them, so that's why we need a lot of volunteers with that. We also have people who just walk up to the desk and say, I bought this, tell me how to get your stuff on it. When we first started out with that, we offered appointments. We learned, we had a lot of different computer classes about how to use computers, how to use the internet. You would have 15 people sign up, and 3 would show up for the class. And you would have devoted an entire staff person's morning to teaching this class. So we stopped doing those because you were taking the quiet computer room out of use to do that, and you had 20 people looking inside the room the whole entire time you're doing the class, wanting to know when they could get their time on the computer for 3 people. So that became a difficult thing to do. Our computers are just heavily used, and we're very generous with the time. You get 2 hours, and once that 2 hours is up, if we still have plenty of open computers, we will extend people's time an hour at a time all day if they want. So we're very generous with the time. But taking a whole 25 computers out of service, especially the quiet room where some people are very precise about the level of noise they're willing to work within. As I was telling your instructor here, we have some people who feel the need to be the monitors for the quiet room. And that doesn't always work so well because sometimes it's this person's coughing, this one types too loudly, and that's really hard to navigate. So we stopped doing that kind of instruction because we just couldn't afford to give that room up, and it wasn't worth staff time. And we started a couple of years ago doing appointments where people would come in and say they had the need, and we would set an appointment with them to come back at another time and have a staff member sit with them solo for 45 minutes or so to teach them what they needed to know. Everything from how to apply for jobs to how to get ebooks on your device. And that worked really great for a while. But again, back to this, I want it and I want it now culture that we're in. What we have are a lot of people that say, well, I'm here right now. I don't want to come back in a couple of days for an appointment. Can't you show me how to do this now? And with the way all of these services are, it's probably at least 30 minutes to be able to talk someone through. You have to get the app, and here's how you have to set up the account, and here's what you need. And even if they're really savvy with it, it's at least 20 minutes talking them through all the different steps. If they're not, it can be as much as an hour. Having talked my parents through this, no, don't click there. I said don't click there. Okay, now we need to start all over again. And sometimes that's over the phone, which we get those too. What are you seeing at the top of the screen? No, what are you seeing? On the right. You are troubleshooting things for people that it's amazing the trust they come to us with. And you want it to be something that they walk away feeling that they have gained the ability to do this themselves. That's why I'm so frustrated with the software that's out there. Because sometimes people walk away and they feel like they have barely understood what you needed to tell them. They're clutching the step-by-step instructions in their hand, but they'll be back in 2 days because they'll have done something that their app doesn't work anymore. And it's not their fault. It doesn't have to be this difficult. But they're there in front of you right at the moment we're across the street from a middle school. So we have about 100 to 120 middle schoolers that come in the after school hours, and there's a certain amount of staff time spent corralling all of that into useful ways of managing their time and not just running back and forth and screaming. And so they will come at that moment when you have 5 people waiting and the phones are ringing, and they want you to show them right at that moment how to get this stuff on their device. You want to be able to help them. You don't want to tell them they need to come back. But you also have to try to manage all the other demands that are in front of you and give them a good experience. So that's another need that we have for volunteers that are there that can say, well, I can't show you this right now, but we have Noah, and he can sit down with you and give you the attention to show you how to do that. So that's one thing that sometimes our computer monitors might get involved in, but we also are trying, this is a new thing we're trying this semester, to have more opportunities for people to just drop in and there's someone available. Now, as the volunteer who's sitting there for a whole 2 hours and not a single person takes you up on it, that can be frustrating, but hopefully there'll be that one time that person walks in and you can walk them through the steps of what they need to do right at the moment that they've identified that need. So it's a struggle because we could have drop-in help, 5 hours a day, and a person would show up at, the 3 hours we don't have it. So it's difficult to balance all of that, but that is one of the greatest needs we have right now, is being able to walk people through how to use these library services on their own personal device. Because it seems like they should be easy, but they're not. And it really helps to have someone walk you through it. We do have step-by-step instructions for everything on our website, but some people, that's not the way they learn. They learn by someone walking them through it. So when you're teaching people with technology, you have to have multiple ways that you can get the information to them so that they learn in the way that's best for them. And that is something that we try to do as well as we can. I should have advanced that earlier. We do when you walk up to the desk, we try to do the on-the-spot training. The one-on-one training is something that we do by appointment if people will let us. Otherwise, we're also doing that on the spot as well, or having a group of volunteers. In December, some of you may have already heard about, we're going to have an open drop-in session, and we've done these for the past couple of years, and we get about 30 people that will come over the course of several hours to something like that. Some of them, it's because they've gotten part of the way through and they just can't finish it, or something's happened to their app since they started. And some people, are just there because they've waited for that specific day where they can come in and get that kind of help. So that's something that we provide, both with one-on-one and drop-in. And then there on the bottom right, part of being able to help people who walk up that have just bought this thing is that we have to have access to all of these different devices so that we can, for ourselves, figure out how to work it before a customer shows up and you look stupid because you're like, I don't know either. Generally, we're brave enough to start pressing buttons, but you want to feel confident. Some staff we have are very comfortable with just trying it out and teaching the customer as they're learning. But we have certain staff members that don't feel comfortable doing that. And so when somebody comes to them with a question like that, they're either going to hang back or they're going to deflect it to another colleague that they think is better at it. So in order to be able to provide consistently good service at the desk from any staff member that you ask a question, we try to have these different devices available for library staff to practice on. And we use a variety of different techniques for them to be able to feel comfortable themselves with these devices. We don't expect them to have them on their own. And we have to update them every so often because there are certain ways that some of these vendors work that only certain products work. You know, like an Android running a certain level of software, an Apple running a certain level of software. The only thing that works on their products. So, so we have to keep updating things, and then we'll do one-on-one training for staff if that's what works for them. We do a lot of scavenger hunts. I create this sheet and say, here's what you need to do. You need to go to the App Store, get this app, put it on the device, check something out, and then I have certain markers that they have to tell me that they have done along the way. What's, you know, the fourth word on page 300 of the particular book that you downloaded, or what's the, you know, put yourself on the hold list for something. I have all these different steps they have to follow. And the last one is delete the app so that the next person can do the same thing. So, you know, so we do that with scavenger hunts. We do it with one-on-one training with each other. We do group sessions where we work together on certain things. But it's really important to keep staff updated on how all of this works. And just when you think you figured it all out, they change the app again, or they change the way the software works. Right now, they're all beginning to become more like each other. This season, 3M, which previously only did ebooks, is now adding audiobooks. So that means their app has to change, and the instructions for how you use it will change. Overdrive, which we use through a consortium group called My Media Mall, is doing away with Adobe Activation. Thank heavens, because that is the worst part of trying to get the app to work on the device. And it's the one that sends a lot of customers around the bend of saying, this isn't worth it. I can't manage this. They're now doing away with Adobe Activation. So that will change their app, and that will change how it works. And some customers, when they have learned how to do it and it changes, they come back to us because they don't understand now how it works and what do they need to do. So it's wonderful to have the community feel that we can help them with this and that they look to us for that, but it's also a little daunting in making sure that the information we provide to them is accurate and it's good, and we're all consistently good at doing it. The same thing with Hoopla. They're going to start adding ebooks, so it's going to get even more confusing. And when a customer comes up to the desk and says, I've heard about ebooks, what do I do to get them? We now have all these different choices that are too many. So we have to start thinking about paring down, and what do you choose to have and what do you choose not to have, to make it easier for customers to make the choices themselves too about what they want to do and what they don't want to do. If you lay too many things out, nobody knows what they want to pick. And we can't afford to have too many multiple services that do exactly the same thing. So that's another interesting thing for us. But this is where we're spending more and more of our time, and this is where we have almost a bottomless need as far as volunteers go, in order to meet those demands of providing that service at the moment that a customer identifies that they have it. Let's see. And then I threw some, the other thing we're constantly having to do, and we have a whole lot more coming than that. That was just what I could think of at the time I made the slide. We're also having to constantly think about what are the next things on the horizon that we should choose to be a part of. You know, there's the whole makerspace going on out there, and we don't have the money or the staff expertise to really delve into that right now. Given the fact that we're just worried about keeping enough staff at the desk to meet customers' needs, we don't have the money to invest in all those other things. So that's one thing that we've had to decide for right now. We're setting aside and doing in other ways. We have an Eliminate the Digital Divide grant with this wonderful institution, which is helping us provide that for teens in a trial way to try some of those different things. So we also have to keep on the horizon of what other vendor products are out there that are really exciting and interesting that we want to provide to our customers. So that's how we got into something like Hoopla. We got into Zenio because it's great to have magazines that you can read without needing to come into the library to check them out. But it'd be great if there was a newspaper product that was that good. And we've certainly looked at lots of different things and haven't really found one that met what we need. So we're always looking at that. And then also looking at just needing to keep our basic computer equipment at the level that it should be, and what software should we have on it, what can we support, what can we not support. The iPads, for instance, our children's department has 12 XP computers. I'm sure you're like, what is XP? But we have left those there when we've updated all the others to Windows 7. We do have to be a little behind because we don't want to launch a bunch of stuff out there for customers that isn't concrete in its usefulness and it's going to have a lot of support problems. We only have 2.5 technology people who support the nearly 200 computers we have in that building. So we don't want to make their lives horrible. So we do have to stay a little bit behind when it comes to operating systems, just to make sure that we can support it. But in the children's department, we haven't been able to upgrade those computers because they run games that are basically CD-ROM games. And you can't run those on Windows 7. So kids are continuing to play the same games that we've always had because there hasn't been a real good way to change those. But what we're going to do, and this is new, we're going to take out half of those computers and replace them with iPads. I think they're going to be stationed on the table so they don't walk on us, but that's going to be real exciting for the little ones because iPads are perfect for kids to try, and they know how to use them very easily without needing to be shown how to use them. Our children's computers don't get a lot of use, I think, because of the things that are on them now. And I think with the iPads, they're going to see a whole lot of use with those. So that's something that we have to keep on the horizon. LEAP is I don't know how many of you are familiar with Polaris. That is our automation system that we use for checking materials in and out. It's also the connection to something like 3M that we use for audio ebooks, so that they're displayed on our catalog and easy for customers to find them without having to go to a completely separate service, which is what most of our other electronic resources are. They are coming out with a version of the staff client that will work on mobile devices. So all of a sudden, that means your check-in, check-out, your interaction with customers on that side that's normally the side they don't see but has all the information about customers and about their holds and different things that they can do is no longer tied to those computers at the desk. That means it can be loaded on a mobile device. You can walk around the building and help people in ways that right now when we're helping them on the catalog and they don't have their library card with them, we have to go look it up. We have to run away from that computer back to a staff computer in order to accomplish that task. And some of the same things with trying to do reader's advisory work, and you want to find books that are in instead of continually suggesting to someone, oh, this is the perfect book, and then when you look it up on the catalog, oh, it's out. No, my second book that's absolutely perfect, that one's out. All of these ways that you can find this more seamlessly will be available in LEAP that we're going to be beta testing in a few months. And that is, to us, quite an exciting thing. To be able to just walk around and have everything we need to help a customer without having to drag them to different places to look things up is really exciting and changing a lot of things. So we're constantly having to think about what's the next thing we're going to try and what do we need, what are things that are fads, what are things that are great but we may or may not be able to afford it, so you have to think about what are the ways you can fund it. And what are those things that we really need to get on board with because it's something we should do? So that's the next stage of what we're constantly trying to do as a management team, as a department, and as an organization. And so it's constantly there. And I know I talked a lot longer than I should have. I haven't left much time for questions.
Let's take 2 or 3 minutes at least for questions. Thank you so much for this rich presentation.
It's something I can sadly talk about all day.
I asked a question on my mind, but maybe other people have.
Sure.
So you
mentioned a lot about all this new technology and things that you guys are implementing, but my question is, how do you get feedback from like the patrons in terms of like what they want? Like, how are you staying abreast of what things that they consider important as to be new technology?
That's tough, because some people don't have any technology of their own, and what they have is what we provide. And they don't even know what to ask for, because it's not something that is in their mindset. But we also look to see what are people bringing in that they're using. What kind of questions are they asking us about things they are doing that they want to see a way that the library can help with that. We also, that's part of what a strategic planning process is for, and every year as we get towards budget time, as managers, we're thinking about what sort of things have come up that we weren't well prepared for, that we feel we need to provide that we're not providing, that we've observed as we go through the year, that we can build into our next year's budget to ask for. That's something we're always trying to keep notes about and try to incorporate into the budget for next year. But it is really tough. And there are some things that we have made a decision not to provide because we don't feel with the level of staffing we have right now we can adequately support. For instance, Photoshop. That's something that people have asked for, that they'd like to see the library have, but it can be complicated to use. And we haven't felt like we could devote the time for staff to feel comfortable with all the ways it can be used. So anything we put on our computers, we want to feel that staff can support for the customer and help the customer. So right now, that's something we've decided we just can't support.
Thank you.
That brings up a question for me, actually, where's my question? And that is the use of open source software. Because when Chicago switched to open source Office, Open Office it was called, suddenly they felt that they were opening a door for their patrons because the patrons couldn't afford Office on their own computers if they had them, and people are of course getting them. So it was a boon for their patrons, and plus it was a boon for the budget of the library. And as you mentioned Photoshop, that made me think about the software I use, because I don't use Photoshop, I use Earthreview, which is more stripped down but very powerful, and it's something that patrons could then afford to have for free on their own devices.
Right.
Have you all thought about that road? It's a different road to be on.
Right, not at this point. Our biggest problem is so few people in our technology department that can help push any of those things out and also teach us about how we can support it and make it available for people. We're constant, with so many computers in the building, they're constantly running and they never can catch up. And since we are standalone for our automation system with Urbana, they also, we have the servers for Polaris, our automation system, in our building, so they're also supporting our catalog and the staff side of it, in addition to all of our regular other computing needs as well, for both ourselves and for Urbana. And it's a lot for 2.5 people to be able to do. So we haven't gone that route. It's been easier to do the CAN software that will stay the way it is when you put it on there. and in pushing things out to the computers, they have a very organized way that they push things out so that all the computers in the entire building all have the same software on them, with the exception of those games in the children's department, because that makes it easier for them to maintain. So that's where we've gone right at the moment. Just whatever's the easiest to maintain for us.
I have a question. As you mentioned, you mentioned digital products are provided maybe by different vendors. Yeah, or maybe the use are not very friendly. So, does the vendors have some training or maybe some videos to instruct the library staff or the users about how to use their product? Maybe they can provide some product and you can broadcast it on the screen, then people can learn by themselves.
Well, all of the vendors do have their own training. Generally, when we're going to launch a new product, the month before, or 6 weeks or so before we're going to launch it, we are running it in the background for staff to become familiar with, so that they know the ins and the outs, and we're generally using the vendors' webinars in order for us to learn how to use that software in addition to our own playing and practicing. A lot of customers don't want to take the time to sit down and watch something even if it's 10 minutes long. They want you to show them exactly what they need to do and take them through the steps. You know, we are actually in a month or so launching lynda.com, which I think the university uses to do a lot of training. So we will have things like that available. It'll be interesting to see how many people take advantage of it, but a lot of people just want learn how to do a very narrow thing, and they want someone to show them. Some people just say, give me the instructions and I will walk away and figure it out myself. So we try to provide things in a variety of different ways. So the webinars are available from the vendor. Most of them are not. Some of them are intended for the customer to watch. Most of them are really intended for library staff. And some places, and we've certainly done this ourselves, make their own. We've had practicum students who their projects have been making YouTube videos to instruct customers on how to use different software that we have. So we try to have a variety of ways so that whatever works best for the user is what we can provide.
Well, the picture that you painted is one of the public library really in the middle of the community trying to become an information city. Because when you talk about the people that you're providing service to, where else can they go for this if they aren't connected to the university? Or some other institution that has big IT department that will help them with whatever need they have, which a lot of workplaces won't. The workplace IT department, we can't help you with your iPad or your smartphone.
Right.
So thank you for that, really. I mean, first and last destination, the public library. So are you all ready? Because also the other story is it's a crisis because enough people to provide the help.
Right.
Which we at GISLIS need to think more about better ways of supporting the libraries.
Well, and we also need to have figured out when exactly we need it and how we can take the help, because there's certainly lots of avenues for help in the community. It's just a matter of making sure that we provide you the information you need in order to know what our need is.
Yeah.
Because it's, you know, and some of our students we've had come and like I said, they sit there every week at the same time and no one comes up and asks them to help.
Well, that's the nature of.
But then the next
sitting at a
half
desk.
hour after they walk away, right? You just can't predict it. But we're very appreciative of the help that we get, and it's fantastic because fresh eyes, fresh voice, and a fresh perspective, and you guys are all younger than we are at the desk, and sometimes customers will be more patient with you than they will be with us because they know us. They see us every day, and so it's nice to have a fresh face.